Hey finance fam, Nikki here with another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, one that seems to be a burning question for a lot of people, and that is, should I rent or should I buy a home? Now, this didn't always used to be such a freaking difficult decision. It used to be quite simple. Owning a home was the American dream. It was what everybody lived to do. Now, things have kind of changed since then. Millennials love to move around. We like being nomads. We like traveling. We like just being free. We also like living minimalist lives. Now, obviously, this is a blanket statement. Not everybody feels this way, but in general, we are a little bit different from our prior generation. Another thing, we lived through the 2008 financial crisis right as we were starting the workforce, and it really left a lot of scars on our hearts. In all seriousness, we really did see some crazy-ish, okay? We saw our families' homes get foreclosed on, our friends' homes get foreclosed on. We couldn't find jobs. It was kind of a big mess, but we survived. And guess what? The housing market recovered almost with a vengeance in some areas. It has become quite expensive to own a home in many cities, and sometimes buying is not always the right answer. It's true. I might get some flack for that. I know some people are super crazy about you have to own a home, it's the only way, but guess what? It's not necessarily the only way. It depends on your lifestyle. It depends on your bank account. It depends on your goals. It depends on a lot of things. So don't feel bad if you've been renting. That doesn't necessarily mean that you've done anything wrong. Basically, what I want to do is go through the pros and cons of buying versus renting. I'm also going to get into a little bit of I guess you can call it misconceptions around calculating how much you've actually profited on your home when you sell it, because I think a lot of people kind of get a little bit forgetful of some expenses to add in there to really figure out how profitable their owning their home really was. So we're going to kind of go into that a little bit as well as a nice little bonus. So let's start with the pros of buying a house. Okay, here are some pros. Number one, everyone's favorite thing, tax deduction. Everybody loves a good tax deduction. Basically, how it works is if you own a home, you can write off on your taxes the interest that you pay on the loan up to certain caps, and loan caps, meaning you can't write off all the interest on a $10 million home. The other thing that you can write off is property taxes. Property taxes are charged. They can change, they can go up and down based on the value of your home. They're definitely something that you have to pay forever. Even if you've paid off your whole entire mortgage, you still have to pay property taxes every single year. So it's definitely something that's nice that we can write off on our taxes. However, that's capped as well. The other caveat to this little tax deduction thing here is it only applies if you itemize your tax deductions. That is a topic for a whole nother video, because you can either itemize your tax deductions or you can take what's called the standard deduction, which is just a flat dollar amount that you get taken off of your adjusted gross income. So what I'm basically trying to get at here is if you're taking the standard deduction anyways and your property taxes and mortgage interest isn't enough to be more than what that standard deduction is, it's not going to be an added benefit. The other pros of owning a home, you can do what you want with it. I am a serial renter right now. I move a lot. I'm always on the go, traveling all the time. So buying a home is not what fits my lifestyle right now, but it is a nice thought to think that you can do what you want with it. You can put a deck in the backyard. You can paint the walls whatever color you want. If you like making your space yours, then that might be more suitable for you. Number three, what everybody pretty much has in their brain all the time, right? Equity potential. There's potential to build equity in your home over time. So we did live through the 2008 financial crisis. We do know that housing prices don't necessarily go up all of the time. But that was a very extreme situation that happened in 2008. And overall, as we've seen, as prices have come back and recovered, over time, asset prices do increase. So that is something that is a benefit. You basically are exposing yourself to that ability to build equity in something. But what I'm going to get to later is that when you go to sell that home, you may not have as much profit as you actually think because you're not thinking about all the expenses in the right way. So I definitely am going to touch on that later. But equity potential is definitely a pro to owning a home. And the other thing is, if you find yourself in a bind and you have $100,000 of equity in your home, you can essentially take out a line of credit to save your butt if you need to. It's not advisable because if the value of your home decreases, you're kind of screwed, or you can be screwed. So it's just one of those things that's there for an emergency. If you really, really needed it, it could be something that you would have access to. Number 4 is security. I mean, everybody wants to know that they have a secure place to call home. And when you buy your home, you've bought it. It's yours. You have a fixed mortgage payment if you do a fixed loan. You know what your payment's going to be, plus or minus with the property taxes, but you know what your payment is going to be over time, and it's just simply security. So that is definitely a pro to owning a home. Okay, let's get to some cons. The first main con, and this is something that a lot of people struggle with, you're stuck. You don't have flexibility. You have to put your home up for sale. You have to hope that somebody wants to buy it for the price you want to sell it for. And if not, you might take a loss on it. Who knows? So if you can't rent it out for what would cover your mortgage, you're going to end up holding the bag and paying that expense while you're waiting for somebody to be able to either buy it off of your hands or to be able to rent it out for what your mortgage is, what your actual mortgage costs you. If you find yourself switching jobs a lot, if you find yourself wanting to move around and travel a lot, then buying a home might not be the best option, especially because the costs, like the interest on the mortgage, are actually front-loaded on the loan, which I'm going to get into. If you're only going to live in it for a few years, you're essentially just going to be paying a bunch of interest, and that's a cost. So it may be cheaper to rent in that case. You have to really do the numbers and figure it out. The second con is maintenance. When you rent, broken AC, call maintenance. Broken refrigerator, hey maintenance, can you come fix this? Roof caving in? Hey maintenance, I got a roof situation. Can you fix this please? I mean, anything that goes wrong, they fix it. It's the landlord's problem. So if you're not much of a handyman or handy woman and you really don't like dealing with that crap, then renting might be the better option for you. If you're gonna buy, you need funds. You need a down payment. You need money in case something goes wrong. You need money in case you need more closing costs. You never know. You need funds, okay? Because if anything goes wrong, how are you gonna fix it? And a lot of people get themselves stuck in this mess where they buy a home and they really can't afford it. They can't afford it if the stove breaks or if the washing machine breaks down. They just don't have the funds. They saved every penny they had for a down payment, and that's all they had. That may not necessarily be the best decision for you, depending on your financial situation and what you're trying to accomplish. If you want flexibility, renting may be the better choice for you. A general rule of thumb is if you're going to live in the house for at least 5 years, then buying may actually end up being cheaper than renting. However, if you're going to be moving in 2 years or 3 years, it may not have cost any difference when you take into account interest, property taxes, closing costs, everything that you've paid to get into that house. It may not be any cheaper, if not more expensive, for you to buy that home versus if you would have just rented it. So if you're not planning on staying in the home for at least 5 years, you need to really think about that. The other thing to think about in terms of if you're going to buy a home and the funds is the money that you're taking to actually put towards a down payment. Is that the best use of that money? There's an opportunity cost to everything. When you take money and you put it into buying a home, that money cannot be invested in anything else. It can't be invested in your 401k, can't be invested in anything else. It's in that home. Now, one thing that really gets me is a lot of people, when they go to sell their home, they come out and they say, oh my God, I made $100,000 selling my home. Well, the reality of it is that might not actually be what you made. And the reason for that is because people don't take into account the fact that when you get a loan, when you get a mortgage, what happens is you basically get an amortization schedule, and what that does is it shows you how much principal and how much interest you're paying each payment. So what happens is when you get a loan, the beginning of the loan is basically, it's very little principal compared to when you look at the ratio of interest to principal. So let's say you get a loan out for $200,000 and you're paying on the loan for the first, 2 years. And you look at it and you're like, man, I thought I paid down way more of that $200,000, but I guess not. Well, what happened was you were just basically paying mostly interest that entire time. Something to keep in mind when you go to sell your home, you really need to consider interest as an expense. Let me demonstrate this for you. Let's say you take out a $300,000 mortgage to buy your home. Let's say that you do a 30-year mortgage, you get around 4% for the loan. That's about what rates are going for right now for 30-year fixed, give or take. What happens is over that 30-year period, so you're paying for 30 years, let's say you stay in the same house forever or you rent it out or whatever, and the end of that 30-year term comes and you're like, yes, I paid off my mortgage. Guess how much you actually paid for a $300,000 house? It's not $300,000. You actually paid $215,000 of interest over the 30-year span of that loan. So what does that mean? That means you actually paid over $500,000 for your $300,000 home. You just need to back out not only your interest, the property taxes you've paid, and also maintenance over time. Those are all expenses. So you have to consider these when you actually are trying to get your real return on your home. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the wrong choice. It could very well so be the right choice. However, we have seen prices appreciate on homes over the past decade since the 2008 financial crisis. Are we going to see that same percentage of price appreciation over the next decade? I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the problem with all of this. It's often said, don't treat your primary residence as an investment. This is why, because it's expensive, there are costs, but until you've taken into account every single expense, you don't really know what your true return is, and it might not be as much as you think. Does that mean that there aren't outliers? There absolutely are outliers. I mean, look at San Francisco, Austin, Texas, New York City. People that bought back in the day, they're killing it, but your area might be completely different. And this is why it's just important to run the numbers, know what you're up against, know what rent costs, know what buying a home costs, compare the two, and decide which one fits your lifestyle better. Oh, and I forgot to mention, realtor fees. That's another cost. So look, I'm just trying to give you guys some food for thought. I want you to really have the information to be able to make the right decision for yourself. It is not necessarily a black or white decision. It definitely depends on your situation financially and what kind of life do you want to live. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments, and also like and share this video if you found it helpful. See you guys in the next one.